strapping young Aussie and his mate jumping on a plane over to Shenzhen with no appointments. What do you do? Like, do you just rock up at some electronics manufacturer and rap on the door?
Scott McKeon.
Scott McKeon, co-founder at Espresso.
Scott McKeon from Espresso.
We got to the end of that first day and it had over 50 grand in pre-sale commitments. And then within the first 3 days, it was $100,000 in pre-sale commitments. We got to get started on the product development process. That piece that went live, a couple of weeks later, the headline was, "This portable screen could change your life."
What's up, guys? Welcome to this episode of Unemployable. As you saw from the trailer, we have a real treat here with Scott McKeon from Espresso. This is an amazing Australian success story of 4 young guys who got together to solve a real-world problem that they themselves were experiencing, that also was frankly done at the exact right moment in time as more people were at home through COVID and looking for solutions to improve their workflows as they were working from home offices and stuff around the world. It's an incredible story of how they just started with an idea, jumped on an airplane, went to China to learn about the industry, funded it through crowdfunding, found a billionaire investor, and have now gone into retail through JB Hi-Fi in over 100 stores around the country. It's an amazing success story in a space that Australia is not usually known for, which is electronics hardware. So strap in for this one, guys. I know you're going to absolutely love it. As always, please like and subscribe. It helps the channel grow. Have a great day. Enjoy it, and I'll see you on the other side. What is up, everybody? Welcome to this episode of Unemployable. We are, as you saw from the trailer, super privileged to have yet another rock star Aussie entrepreneur in the under 30s club, no less, here in the Unemployable studios to talk about the stellar rise of one of the hottest electronics brands to come out of Australia in a long, long time. These guys are absolutely crushing it. And they're good dudes. So we are really looking forward to this. Scott, thank you so much for being here, mate. How you doing?
Yeah, good. Awesome to be here.
Yeah, up from Sydney, I believe.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a bit cold, right? I bet you weren't expecting it coming up here.
I was happy to take a couple of extra days up here as well.
It's always a good excuse. Well, thank you for being here. Can't wait to dive into it. Marky Marks, how are you, buddy?
Mate, I'm great. When I looked at the call list and saw that it was Scott from Espresso coming on, I was like, yes, can't wait to chat with him. I bought one of these, or actually got one of these screens gifted to me, which you'll see and we'll hear about it in a minute. Back in 2021, I've been using it ever since. So great product. It's
an amazing product. And if you haven't heard of Espresso yet, you're going to be going out to buy one sometime during this call.
If you're a nomadic entrepreneur, yes, you will.
Yeah, because it's a great product, and it's I've seen the ads and and now after what you're showing us off camera, I can't wait to dive into it. Eric, what's going on, mate? How are you, mate?
Very good, always good as usual. Just grateful to have Scott here. Fly up from Sydney to come on the pod. You kind of take it for granted sometimes, people traveling we've had New Zealand, Melbourne, Sydney coming up for the pod. And like you just said, taking an extra couple of days and taking a bit of this blue skies and sunshine. So yeah, glad to have you here, mate. Thank you for making the time.
Yeah, thank you.
And what is it there, the fact that the only Canadian on the pod is rugged up like he's, look at us, we're Aussies.
Because, I can actually take it off. You know what? I want to take it off.
Yeah. I was in
because
Melbourne.
Now I know that because James isn't here. Usually he's putting this AC to 19 degrees and I'm freezing.
Guy comes
and it
in
makes me got to
redlining.
go to the toilet and I don't want to get up during the pod, mate. So.
Guy comes in redlining. Mate, I was in Melbourne over the weekend and I didn't even pull out a jacket like that. So.
I know. You're rugged up for the Goldie, mate. Enough of the banter. Let's get into the good stuff with Scott. So, Scott, tell us just to kick things off. We've read in the press, we know you're an 8-figure business. We know that you've grown, a stellar story. You've recently done some funding from some pretty high-profile Aussies, no less from the tech space, which is a huge endorsement of what you guys are doing. But for the people who've never heard of Espresso before, in a nutshell, what is Espresso? Where's your niche? What do you guys sell? And maybe while he's describing it, Richard, in the B-roll there, you could throw up the website so we can put some vision to what he's talking about. So over to you, Scott. Let's get the audience in the picture.
Yeah, so we're really focused on ways that you can be more efficient and be more productive in, I guess, the ways that you work Monday to Friday, even on weekends and whatnot. And how that's resulted is particularly in a portable monitor, where you are used to having multiple monitors at your dedicated desk. But there's a lot of times throughout the week where you're working without extra screens just off your laptop. Sometimes that's fine, but many times, at least what I found, is that it wasn't enough. You did want to have those multiple screens. And a category like that didn't really exist back when we had that initial idea.
And when did you have that initial idea?
So it was in 2018. And I guess my prehistory to this was I studied civil engineering at UTS. And I got an internship pretty early whilst at my studies, mostly to kind of see whether that was a career line I wanted to go down. And I remember on my first day, you get set up with 2 screens and a laptop, and you kind of think you're like Superman. You got all this tech that you've never used before, and about a week later, you're used to it now. And once you have to work without those additional screens, it's almost like it's an impediment or you're less efficient. And dancing between working there, where I'd, as much as possible, kind of do my uni work and on nights after my clocked hours, and also around at university campus where I just have my one laptop screen going around. It was always something that sat in the back of my mind of there was times where I was more efficient and then other times where I just felt less efficient. But at that stage, I never really knew what I could do about it. And it got into my final semester where I was doing a subject with a university friend who was a mechanical engineering major. And this whole thing of, hey, we needed a second screen came up again. And he's like, oh, we could probably do something about that. And that night, he ended up 3D printing a bracket that sat onto his laptop, and it just became this idea that we couldn't pull ourselves away from.
Wow. So I asked you before we rolled tape how old you were. You said 29. And so you would have been 23 then.
23 then,
doing the math. Mate, these young people coming up today, it's just amazing how many young people we get through this pod in their 20s that have built 8-figure businesses is just stunning to me. Like we talk about it quite a lot, that it is tough for young people coming through with Aussie house prices and different things. But let me give you the tip, mate. There wasn't too many people in their 20s with 8-figure businesses when I was that age. That would have been like...
There was none.
There was none. There's nobody. I mean, their whole net worth might have been 10 million to get on the rich list at that point today with technology and the world we're living in. And it's yet another example of just young Aussies innovating and creating really substantial businesses, from this little country and this little corner of the world.
It's funny, Adam, because the spread of wealth across young people is definitely lower than what it's ever been, but the speed of wealth possible today, it just does not compare. Like if you really dial in and focus in and tune in and do the right things, the speed of wealth is so much quicker than it's ever been.
But I guess the first lesson in what we've learned already here is that you noticed a problem, right? Alex Hormozi talks about the 4 things that you need to sort of vet an idea really quickly. Number 1 is solve a real problem. And I've only recently, and I mean in the last 3 months, for the first time ever, worked on 2 screens, right? Like,
really?
Yeah, for real. So that setup that's just behind the glass on the other side of the studio, I went into Harvey Norman, I bought 2 monitors, and set myself up with 2 screens. I was like, oh, where have this been all my life? And I'm like, such a late adopter to that. And you're right. Once you've got the 2 screens, it's amazing. And I know you're looking at me going, oh my God, you're a dinosaur, dude. But
I can't believe you're so successful on one screen.
I'm a last of the uni screeners. Yeah. Have you got a computer yet, Eric? So you noticed this problem of portability, and you're right, because these days tech has sort of naturally liberated us as well. People are, Atlassian, most of their staff are not in an office, they're remote, they're all over the world. So you've sort of noticed a problem and I guess ridden on the back of a technological wave that's kind of wind at your back kind of idea. So there was nobody else doing this at scale in this country or globally, or were you right at the start of that whole trend?
Yeah, so it was one of these things initially that when we were, I guess, brainstorming or just talking about this problem, we were ready to buy a product. We were like, show us the right product, we'll buy it and carry on our day. And we just couldn't really find anything that like we wanted or that we thought was the right solution. For us, it was so simple. It's very similar, like a laptop screen that just sits next to your laptop and you can pack it away, take it in your bag and go anywhere. If you're traveling, go from pop it up on a kitchen table or a coffee shop or anything like that. And we looked to Kickstarter, and Kickstarter is like a platform where people with ideas and kind of like a prototype can go and get that initial support. And the closest thing at that time was kind of like a pop-up projector that had a canvas. And we thought, that's just overcomplicating it. And for us, like, we didn't have any business experience then. We didn't have any tech experience. We didn't have any supply chain experience, but it just seemed awesome to be able to uncover that. So initially we started to like buy what components that we could online. And then very quickly we booked tickets to China just to go into the heart of Shenzhen and just see what it's all about. We didn't have any meetings booked. We didn't have any particular, reason to go there except for like, wouldn't this be cool? Kind of like it was kind of thought a bit like a holiday where you just go to another country just to see what it's about, but with this extra lens. And it was kind of like entirely fueled on that energy to start with because no one was asking us to do it. And we definitely didn't have, I guess, the industry pulling us in that direction.
Just for the record, like in China, you've got, and we've probably spoken about this before, but you've got certain regions that specialize in certain products, and Shenzhen specializes in electrical products.
Is it, yeah. Is it monitors specifically or just electrical?
Everything.
Electrical.
Yeah. So Shenzhen's just the other side of Hong Kong. So we actually flew into Hong Kong and got about a 40-minute train kind of across to Shenzhen. You can also get a ferry across.
I've been to Shenzhen, yeah.
Yeah. So, and that's kind of, I think it was a very basic village by the water like 30 years ago, but with kind of the rise of electronics in the last couple of decades, it's just grown into a massive city.
So the we in this discussion, the guy at your university, was it Will, Gary, or Fabian? Any of your co-founders?
So it was Will. So Will was that friend. He's one of the co-founders. He's the CEO.
There's 4 of you, right?
There's 4 of us. Yeah.
Will, Gary, Fabian, and you.
Yeah.
Okay. And they've sent you along today. Perfect. So you and Will, I mean, I'm trying to get this picture in my head, and I love these stories because I'm just trying to picture like this strapping young Aussie and his mate jumping on a plane over to Shenzhen with no appointments. That you weren't going to a trade show.
There's no trade show.
No trade show.
No.
So no appointments, no trade show. What do you do? Like, do you just rock up at some electronics manufacturer and rap on the door? They go, wow. You're like, I don't know, like, you can't speak Chinese. What the fuck? What do you do?
It was a little bit like that. So it was, we had the idea and we'd meet up for coffee at uni a couple times and just keep talking about it and figure out like, what can we do next? And the 2 things that we did were like, okay, let's move into a share house together because then, life goes on, and to actually put, the amount of energy behind actually putting it forward, we're like, we won't be able to escape each other every night, weekends, things like that. It's just that's the focus. And so that was the first thing. And then second thing is let's book flights to Shenzhen. Let's get in the heart of it all, be where the action's at. And we booked those flights, and then it was like, now we figure it out. So what we were doing, there's a pretty good, I guess hardware in Australia is not that common, but there are really, I guess, small communities where it does exist. And there was like a really active Facebook group. And so we started posting on that Facebook group. There was someone who was from Shenzhen or spent a bit of time there that's now in like the Australian hardware ecosystem. And she was over there at the time. And so we met at a co-working space with a bunch of, expats who, work typically for like an international company, and they'd be like the local kind of supply chain quality assurance person. And we joined this co-working space, and that co-working space pretty much had, so much experience that we didn't have, and helped us like kind of plug in.
How good.
Yeah.
And so you were living off savings.
Yeah. So it was, I just finished university, and I had a whole career lined up in civil engineering. I got a graduate offer, and at the same time, this idea was just getting so much momentum behind it. And I guess I was thinking that, once I go full time in, I guess, that type of career, I'm going to give that my all.
Yeah.
And so then to do that and also put, I guess the energy behind something else, I just didn't see that happening. And I kind of thought, hey, if I could kind of have, I would say like a gap year where I try this, and if it works, great. But if it doesn't, I can go back to that. And so I kind of went all in on Espresso and this idea far before it was viable.
What did your family say? Because I know parents are like, go to school, get a civil engineering degree, you're going to get a job placement, and that's what you're going to do, and you're going to live an amazing Australian life. So when you're telling your mom and dad that basically you're going, you know what, I'm actually not going to take that job offer, and we're hopping on a flight to China, right? And we've got this crazy idea. Did they back you, or were they a bit hesitant?
They absolutely did, but they were definitely confused. So throughout my whole degree, I was always very proactive in doing a lot of things. And a lot of it was driven by like not knowing what I wanted to do. So it was, when I got that internship, it was actually at the end of first year university. And I pretty much spent the whole, first year university trying to find an internship and someone who would give, an 18-year-old an internship. And the whole thinking around that was, within the first year and a half of uni, choose a degree, do 1 year of university, get to know the lay of the land of the degree, 6 months of internship, go away from actually doing studies, know if, the actual work experience of doing that degree. And then I spent 3 months traveling in Europe, spending all that money, having a great time without the attachment to a degree, to a course. And that was kind of like where I was reflecting, like, do I want to continue with that? And throughout the rest of my degree, I do a lot of like, program-based international like courses where you go to like Cambodia and do like a plastics recycling program, and worked on a nonprofit with a couple of friends who went over to Nepal following the earthquake to like kind of support there, and that was obviously engineering related for me as well. So like I'd always been doing these things, and this was like I guess another thing, but obviously that one came at putting the typical career path on pause. So they definitely backed me, and they knew that like I definitely had a vision and a direction for this. But they also knew that I had, a backup plan of I could go back to that career, and I guess I made sure to make it as an easy path back.
I think there's a hack. Did you want to add something to that?
No, I was just going to say we often get so many stories of people that had to succeed against all the odds and all the doubters, but it actually is really, really nice to hear a story of someone whose parents
support.
backed them and family.
It's not always like that.
And I think for everyone out there watching, that's something that's really so important, especially when someone's young, to get that backing, and you can just see it in your aura that there's belief in you, and it's pretty special.
So the unlock there, first of all, you just went to China. They say entrepreneurs jump off cliffs and build planes on the way down. I think it was Reid Hoffman. Reid Hoffman said that. So you jump off, you go to a foreign country. And the reason I made the joke about China, because most of this stuff, when you get out to where the factories are, they do not speak a word of English, right? Like that's actually the reality. I've been there. There's huge cultural divides that don't speak the English. You're trying to negotiate and all that sort of stuff. And so the fact is you went and you figured it out on the way, which is number one. And then number two, you're really smart because you went to a co-working space. Was it a WeWork, just out of interest?
We did visit a couple of those, but this was like a smaller, smaller space.
So you went to a smaller space, and that's where you met the Chinese girl there?
It was already lined up from a Facebook group
from
in
the
Australia.
Facebook group, okay.
But she knew of that co-working space, and we met a bunch of people there.
Okay, so you went to the co-working space, and now you're in this sort of entrepreneurial, target-rich environment. When I moved to Los Angeles many years ago, that's what I did too. And it was such a great move because you're surrounded with all these people and network and resources. You're not sort of isolated off to the side. So now you're surrounded by people who you can turn around to, get advice. Probably, was there any other Western entrepreneurs there trying to crack into the Chinese market or make connections?
Yeah, there were a bunch. So it was a mixed bag, and they'd also all go out to dinner together, which was amazing. Pretty exciting. There was a guy who is pretty famous on YouTube for like making an iPhone from secondhand components in markets. So like that guy was there as well. So you have this whole like, I guess, expat in China, like maker community, which is really rich. And it made it feel really real for us from the start, rather than being in this like, I guess, far away thing in a foreign country. Yeah,
you're surrounded by entrepreneurs, right? And that's what, when I was in WeWork in Los Angeles, it was the same. And actually the business we're about to launch, one of the guys, my business partner in that project I met in WeWork Los Angeles 2011. He's now back home in Perth as well. But it's amazing who you meet in those environments. I got to know Adam Newman, the founder of WeWork, quite well, and all of that thing. So you jump on the plane, you go over, you've used a Facebook group, and now you're in China. And so what was the next step? So you went out and then started contacting some factories.
Yeah.
Did you do that, or your friend that was there, I suppose, did that with the language barrier?
So there was a few things that we were trying to achieve. So we'd find people who would already be making or manufacturing, monitors in general. Mm-hmm. So we went out and visited them, and I guess some vendors on, say, something like Alibaba, some of them will be, I guess, the actual manufacturer, but some of them will also just be a marketing
Trading company.
Yeah, a trading company. So the difference between the two is that we were looking to kind of create a custom product. Like nothing we make is white label. It's all custom. You know, every detail is thought through. And but then we need to we had that vision, but we didn't have that capability. So we needed to find the people who did have that capability. And the difference was if you went to some and said, hey, can you change these things? Some would say yes, but others would say no. And that kind of, for us, that helped us kind of be like, okay, who actually is the person creating it? And getting to know, I guess, what those, organizations were about. The other part that we found that was particularly useful then was like a prototyping place. So a place that could like rapidly prototype all the different components, like the aluminium on the back, to kind of make the right configuration that we wanted at the prototyping stage. But there wasn't really an objective from that trip. It was really just to see what it's all about.
What was it? Can you walk us into your experience? Like, I used to take people to China as part of my business, and I would watch them routinely. It was always good because it always, like after a while, you sort of get used to it because I've been to China so many times. But when you take somebody to China for the first time, to the Canton Fair or out to a factory or something, you watch their mind just get blown, just like, like I can imagine you walk into some of these electronics manufacturers and it could be blown for a number of reasons. Sometimes it's just the sheer scale, and sometimes it's sheer scale in the other way, where you see this amazing product coming out of what looks like an abandoned, chicken coop, with 50 guys there just pumping stuff out, and you just can't believe that comes out of that. Did you have any experiences like that are memorable that you could share, of just like your mind being forever changed after going to China? Yeah,
so one of them was from that co-working space, we met this American guy who was an electronics engineer. And what we were trying to figure out at that point was less about, I guess, the frame or the mechanical design, but more about the circuitry, the circuit board. And he took us on a journey from the co-working space down the main strip in Shenzhen, so it was very populated. Down a street, around a corner, some building that has no signage on it. In that building, in an elevator, third floor, monitors galore. Like every component that you could think about from probably every vendor, just a whole floor full of like specific components. And, I remember just thinking like, had we not had someone show us that, we would never find it.
Yeah, and you've got to be there, right?
Of course.
China's the type of place that you just have these incredible experiences like that. I always joke, my first product on Amazon that I sourced in China, and it was a U-shaped wine decanter. And we went down, I was in the Hebei province up in the north, and we got all the way out there, and the girl who was taking me going, oh, you like this factory, very good, very good factory. And we get there, and they made glass dildos, bongs, and wine decanters. So my first product was made in a glass dildo factory in China.
I won't ask which one you tested first.
No, but it's just that kind of experience that you have in China, and then it's just such an interesting place. What you see in down corridors.
We were just there recently, and when we were first starting our e-commerce journey back in 2019, we're thinking, well, all these big brands, they must get their inventory produced at like these shiny brand new factories with these Tesla-like production lines. But then when you actually go to China, you realize a lot of the big brands, the same brands as us little guys, are using the same manufacturers, and they're literally an ambiguous building. It's rough, no signage, and inside they've got like just specializing in that one part or that one thing. It's really wild.
So looking at your website and your brand and the product, it's super clear that you guys have an extreme attention to detail and a very clear vision of the way you want the thing to look and feel, right? And I think that's been a huge part of your success, because when I first saw it, I was like, wow, these things look amazing. And in real life, you've got one there on the thing. So that product that your first iteration, this is a later iteration, but the first product, they custom made these for you. Is that right? And how much, I guess, first, did they do it? What was the process like of getting it to where it is? And how do you sort of get them to only make that for you? Is a question I'd have at the start.
Yeah. So the journey to get to actually what we wanted was something that looked like it was the best product in the category as well. So like I think there's a lot of, I guess, products out there, especially once you go and, I guess, visit to Shenzhen in electronics. There's a lot of very products that I guess you can appreciate from the function perspective, but they're not necessarily products that I would buy or I would use, especially in the kind of the monitor category. So for us, the design was really important part because, it's not just the design, but it's also the quality and the durability. And this is designed to be carried around and taken. And me personally, I do travel quite often, and I'm also pretty rough on tech as well. So like I've broken that many phones over the years. So that was always really important right from the start. The other part was also around, say, you can see there the magnets on the back. So having the aluminium frame that would be super light, super thin, but then also attached without, clips or straps or anything else like that. So just having the magnets there quite seamlessly. But that wasn't very simple and straightforward to do. But part of it was around actually how difficult it was to make. So the way we launched and went to market was through Kickstarter.
Mm-hmm.
And from Kickstarter, there was no budget, like no marketing budget, really. We had no marketing expertise. We did find an agency that that is Kickstarter specialty. So they kind of helped, and they did a lot of the heavy lifting, and we activated our community that we got to know over the.
Do you remember the agency? Was it Launchboom?
No, it was a similar one. It was a similar one, yeah.
So you basically had a clear idea of what you wanted to build, and I guess some renders or something?
No, we had the actual prototype.
Oh, you had a prototype.
So that first trip to China was November 2018.
Mm-hmm.
And then July 2019, we actually had a lot of the, the CNC aluminium on the back. We had the panels on the front with the magnets, and then the circuit boards that fit into that chassis design with the front. And, myself with a couple of others back at that co-working space glued the first 30 in that space. And then we shipped some of them over to that Kickstarter agency, and we shipped the rest home to Australia, where at that point people started to be like, hey, can I buy that prototype? And that's when we're like, okay, now this is at that stage of getting ready.
So the supplier actually created the prototype for you? Because you mentioned before you went to a prototype company, or was it a separate company that created the prototype?
It was separate by then. So that I think at that they might have done the CNC aluminium chassis. But I guess to answer the question, I think it's because we custom design every part. It's a lot of it's like different suppliers, and then we then have our partner who receives all of that and puts it together. And now we've actually over the years moved out of Shenzhen and into Malaysia with that's particularly through Gary, one of the other co-founders. He's our COO. He's got at that time about 15, 16 years of product development experience with companies like ResMed and Cochlear and whatnot. So that real med tech focus, which Australia is really good at. So that supply chain leveled everything up, and they're very professional operators that supply chain. It's
a really smart way of doing things because it helps to also create a moat around the product. And I've just recently been in at Canton Fair, and I'll basically go crazy for tech for myself because I'm just so interested in it, not doing tech products. But there's still no one in Canton Fair who's come up with a product that's anywhere near comparable.
So you've moved your manufacturing to Malaysia now.
Malaysia.
Yeah, right. And so what's the reasoning to go to Malaysia? Just because what was the reasoning?
So we had a number of partners through our, particularly through Gary, who he had relationships over in Malaysia, but also the working relationship with this very serious, large contract manufacturer, was a really good opportunity.
I've never heard of manufacturing in Malaysia. No. It's funny. I meet so many entrepreneurs, but never anything significant like that.
Just to confirm, are you getting all your parts from different places, and this manufacturer in Malaysia is putting it together?
So it's a combination of sometimes they might have better purchasing power due to other, clients and partners from them, or sometimes we actually source independently. So it's constantly managing that supply chain.
Right. Yeah, interesting. And so so you've got your prototype, you go to Kickstarter, and you use an agency. How much did the agency cost you, just out of interest, just for people listening who are thinking, how much does it cost to go on Kickstarter and kick it off to have, because we know that you raised $450,000
Yeah, 430
430
Yeah.
grand Aussie dollars.
Aussie dollars.
Aussie dollars on a Kickstarter campaign focused in the US,
It was focused globally.
globally. Yeah.
Yeah, but with not much marketing budget,
Wow.
not many ads or anything like that. It was really just activating a lot of the community. So the way those agencies work, and the reason I think we were we did that is because they charge an upfront fee, but it's nothing too crazy. But then they also take a percentage of the success, and that's pretty common across the industry, and that helps particularly because I guess Kickstarter customers, like, they don't have a lot of upfront cash. Otherwise, they probably wouldn't do Kickstarter to begin with. But also the degree of success also means it's a good incentive for the agency to do well. And so that's.
And
that
how
made it
long did
accessible
you
for
have
us.
to deliver? So you've got the 430 grand. How long did it take you to fulfill those orders?
So that was like during October, and I remember the night before the Kickstarter, we were in the share house, and both Will and I, and even Fabs was there with us at the time. Like we couldn't speak. We were like, a whole year, this whole journey up until this point, we're kind of finding out tomorrow whether or not we're crazy. So that in itself, like I remember it was going live at 3 a.m. Australian time, which was I think like 9 a.m. LA time, midday New York time, to focus on that potential reach. And I remember I went to bed like pretty early. I was like, I'm going to bed. I'll wake up, see what happens. And Will stayed up until the start. So it was kind of like funny seeing the different approaches with it. But then when we got to the end of that first day, and it had over 50 grand in pre-sale commitments. And then within the first 3 days, it was $100,000 in pre-sale commitments. And it got towards the end of that 40-day campaign. And Will and Fabs had already booked flights to China, and like, all right, Scott, you pack up the house. We got to get started on the product development process. That's when Gary really started getting more involved, because now we had to actually do the product development. He was one of our first Kickstarter backers, and he was chatting to Will a lot, where they met through ResMed. And that kind of got that production process going.
So when you're doing a launch like that and it goes live, what are you actually seeing on the screen? Like, do you actually see the numbers in real time going up, like $10, $60, $150, $2,000? How does it actually, what does it actually look like?
Yeah.
Or is it just like, okay, we're starting, and then you get at the end of it and says you've raised 400 grand?
No. You see it live in real time. It's kind of like an e-com store, but it actually has like kind of like a meter that like starts to roll and increase.
Dopamine hit.
The anxiety levels would have been through the roof.
I bet you can't remember too much of what happened after 100 grand. Just
Yeah.
like, it's amazing.
Well, we knew that we had to. We knew that the Kickstarter campaign just started the real work. Like the Kickstarter campaign was that had to go well. Like that was, if we didn't like get those pre-sales, then we wouldn't have had the money to put it into production.
So yet another example of pre-selling. We talk about this a lot on the pod, the power of pre-selling products, see if the product market
Testing.
fit before you.
So obviously you raise a 430 grand. You're now on a plane back to China. How did you negotiate the pricing with these manufacturers in China for the different componentry, being a couple Aussie guys that have never done this before? So how do you sit there and negotiate so you can actually come up with a raw cost versus retail price on what this thing can actually sell for, and trying to make a little bit of margin along the way?
Yeah, so that so Will and Fabs went over there back to Shenzhen, and they pretty much stayed there for a couple months.
Wow.
And this was at the end of 2019. So I think we'll end up coming back in February 2020, and there's a whole story there. Yeah, exactly. Well, during it over there. And so during that time, it was them in person, working with the suppliers, day in, day out, sleeping only for a couple of hours, in the morning. And then Gary was actually helping with the process and the staging. So you got to go through, design validation testing. So does the design look right? And then you go through engineering validation testing. And then that kind of goes, does it work functionally? And then you go into production validation testing, which is, can we then put that into a production line to ship the next product?
And how much would something like that cost? Obviously, you raise some money, right, through Kickstarter, but all these validation points sound very expensive.
The costs, I guess the upfront costs were a lot higher than what we thought, and then even the variable costs of the product, the COGS, because we had to make a lot of design decisions that turning a prototype into production is like a whole thing in of itself. And for us, we only had a prototype, so that was a massive undertaking during those months. But everyone who bought from Kickstarter got an absolute great deal because our costs were a lot higher than what we thought.
Yeah. Now, how much, like those upfront costs, not the COGS, but just the development side, when you say it costs a fair bit, are we talking 10 grand, 50 grand, 100 grand? Just in that development kind of phase?
In the tens. It's not a lot for at the time for what we had. But they all came they came up one at a time, right? Rather than, we now need to do this. Okay, well, to do that, then there's this upfront fee. And they kind of started to mount as the remainder of the crowdfunding.
You're paying for that out of crowdfunding at that point, or are you still you're paying for that out of crowdfunding?
And Gary obviously was quite instrumental in this part because this was his background, I'm assuming.
Yeah, that's what he brought. He brought all the experience and process, and then Will and Fabs were on the ground there, so they've got a ton of stories.
So in regards to the structure of the business, obviously at the beginning was you and Will, because this is very important for listeners, right? In regards to partnering with people and when do you bring someone in with ownership or not. So explain kind of the journey. It was you and Will, and then there's obviously a couple other guys, Gary and Fab. How do they come into the mix? And how did you know to partner them in or not, or just pay them a consulting fee? Yeah,
so it's really just about like going on a journey together and then having those conversations. So like Fabs was one of like Will's good friends from university over that time, and Fabs when we were living in the share house, I think at one point he was staying over at our place on an airbed for weeks at a time. And so he just became more and more, just a part of the team organically. There wasn't any agreements or anything like that. So that's just how that happened. And then obviously like Gary stepped in massively, and so it's like, it's kind of just happened. And it's really just have those conversations and you work out, something that's like right for everyone, but you know what's right.
Just a few 19-year-olds sleeping on, air mattresses, creating amazing products.
Okay, so you've got this, you've got your money in the bank, you're developing the prototype, and then it's ready to ship at some point, I guess. And so then you just ship out the Kickstarter orders, is that right? And you've got a bit of cash left over to order some inventory. What was the transition from getting your final product, fulfilling those orders? Did you have enough cash to go through, or how did you? Because I look at this and I just see a capital intensive business, right? Mm-hmm. Like it's expensive doing what you're doing. So what was the journey there?
Yeah, so it was one of those things where the time to delivery took a lot longer because we then had, Will and Fabs had to come home from China where you couldn't be right there with your, suppliers making and producing the product. And so that was supposed to be delivered around April 2020. And that kind of happened between June, July, for the rest of 2020 there. So that was kind of from the timeline perspective. But at the same time, during that time, everyone just started working from home. Everyone started working from kitchen tables, dining tables. Yeah. They didn't have desks and monitors, or if they had monitors at work, then they might not have had a place to do it. So at the same time, we were also being told, how can you get more? How can you get more?
Hey guys, we recently ran a property day where we took people on the road in 2 buses and showed them 12 real estate deals. 4 of them were commercial and the rest were land subdivision deals around the Gold Coast and southern Brisbane. And this is the workbook. It's a 43-page workbook where we actually show you each and every deal, how much was paid for it, how the development was done, how much money was made, and so much more. And we've decided to give this away to anybody who's interested in this kind of thing. All you need to do is go to unemployable.com.au/2024, 2024. It'll give you an insight into what our coaching clients get when they join us in the program. It'll show you how millions of dollars were created through real estate deals right here in Australia just in the last few years, and you can get it for absolutely free. Go to unemployable.com.au/2024. So what did you do? So like You've got the markets going up. You've just finished this prototype. You send those out when they're ready. Was the feedback really positive from your Kickstarter clients when they got them?
Yeah, so from the Kickstarter clients, and then also before we were able to deliver, we had a couple of production samples without the logo or anything like that, and we sent it to John Davidson, who's the tech editor for the AFR. So I remember going over to his place in Surrey Hills and like giving him a demo, and that piece that went live, a couple of weeks later, the headline was "This portable screen could change your life."
Wow.
And it talked, not only due to the need of a product like this that, is more prevalent at that time, but also, I guess our approach and, the quality of the product from his in-depth experience as someone who like looks at tech from all over the world.
So for non-Aussies, AFR is the Australian Financial Review. It's our largest, pretty much only financial newspaper, like the Wall Street Journal of Australia. So did you have a website at that time for Espresso? Had you named to the company? Did you have a website? Where were you at there?
It was, as it was in pre-sales, so it's initially Kickstarter, and then, but once your Kickstarter campaign's over, like that's you just give updates and make sure that you fulfill all of your customers. But then Indiegogo, which is a very similar platform, they also have kind of like it's a program called In Demand, which kind of means you can kind of keep it as always on, like a website placeholder. And so we were still using that at that point. And it wasn't until probably later that year, once we'd fulfilled all those customers, that we set up a website.
And how many customers were there at that point with the Kickstarter campaign? So how many actual prototypes did you send out?
There was initially 1,151 on Kickstarter. And then I think there was another like 500, 600 from Indiegogo over that time, just coming in organically or through like the press reviews and initial product reviews.
That would have been such an exciting time for you guys. But looking back, now you're in JB Hi-Fi, it's all over the press, and you over 100 stores, I believe. Yeah. And it just came from, grafting your way out and just finding that path. It's so exciting. We'll get to that deal in a minute and talk about how that's changed your lives and how that all came about. But so you have this website, you're working on delivery date. When did you start selling? Did you start originally just selling e-com, direct to consumer? Was that initially, and then you went retail?
Yeah, so we went e-com pretty much because that was we were a new brand. We were still figuring things out. We created a website, and we, because our Kickstarter customers were from all over the world, we kind of took where were the major markets from that and said, okay, let's see what we could set up in each country. So I think we spread ourselves far too thin across different countries and regions and warehouses. And, we had a period where, people would get products and, a change of mind policy, whatever, someone would send them back and we'd be like, where should I send it back to? And we're like, good question. So we contact some friends that live in that region, and they'd accept it whilst we figure out what is actually this kind of long-term, returns setup. Because I guess compared to maybe like, fashion or I guess other categories, because it's electronics, you need a place that can actually inspect the electronics, plug it in, make sure it works, as you kind of establish your e-com presence.
Interesting. So you set it up, and so you were spread out selling in America. Well, basically, I guess where Kickstarter clients were. And was there a moment where you said, all right, we need to focus on this market or that market? And what was that decision?
Yeah, so we end up kind of just locking in on US, UK, Europe, and Australia.
How's that all?
That's what I was.
That all?
Yeah.
That's why I said we did spread ourselves quite thin.
Jeez,
that was a reduction.
Where
of
were
your
you
focus.
previously?
That was a reduction, but by the time we got to that decision, we'd already set up, I guess, the warehousing and logistics on that point. So, but then from that, then you kind of have the learning e-commerce journey. Was also learning about how to present the product in an advertising format. Like again, we're all four of us are kind of engineering backgrounds, and I guess the three other co-founders were a lot more kind of product focused at that time. So I kind of got given the task of like trying to figure out marketing. So that's kind of,
Well, you figured it out. Your website's beautiful. It looks great.
we got a ton of help, a ton of great advice along the journey.
But you know what they say, you can't put lipstick on a pig, right? You've got a good product here. Like to start with, it's aesthetically pleasing to look at. So the engineering first thing is very kind of Jobsian, right? Like you got to have that great engineering, even though he wasn't the engineer, but they always understood the power of engineering. And I mean, the photos here are just terrific on the website.
I love the minimalistic, style of the website.
I mean, yeah, it has to be though, doesn't it? Right? Like, because that's what that's the product.
Yeah.
It's like, not going to inconvenience you to take an extra screen. So like when you were setting this one up on the stand here, the way that all collapses in to being flush mounted, it's not bulky and awkward. It's like if Mark unplugs it there, you can see that you've actually engineered that.
Yeah. There's a lot of thought that's gone into
it. Yeah, there's a lot of that, and that's the attention to detail piece, right?
Yeah, I think tech can very easily become far too feature rich, and you have all these features, but you don't really know what to do with it. So I think being really, make it really easy for customers and users of a product, especially when it comes to tech, when the first thing you think about when you have a tech product is, how long is it going to take to set up, or how difficult will it be? Will it work for me? Will it not work for me? And if you can make it super simple, plugs into your device just with one cable, and instantly you have the display lights up.
Yeah, well, that was so powerful when you came here just before we rolled tape, and you have this flat square thing that looks like it might be a battery or something. It just opens up to a mount. There's no screws. There's no real instructions required here. It's super intuitive to use. So, okay, so you've got this great product that's led by engineers, which is great, but engineers that have an appreciation for the sort of Steve Jobs approach, like when Steve Jobs went into his engineers with his iPhone and said, here's all the best phones in the world. We want no buttons on our phone. I'll come back in a month. Can you imagine switch. Can you imagine them freaking out? Like every phone in the world at that point was run by a full QWERTY keyboard. And he said, we want none. And then he compromised down to two. I think it was a switch and a button or something. So you guys sort of, I guess I'm just speaking for you here, but I can see that you kind of have an appreciation for that concept of what else can we take away with it still being great. Would that be right?
Yeah. So we started because we wanted to solve this problem, and we didn't have the business experience, or that wasn't really the lens that took a lot of the importance at that stage when we were kind of crafting what the product actually is. It was really about what do we want? What would we use? And also what would we be proud and excited to create and put into the world? So that was the lens that led a lot of those decisions.
To Espresso, yeah. So you got a great product, and then that the thing that you said there that I want everyone listening not to miss is where you said people were trying to buy our prototype. So I listened, it might have been Peter Thiel or somebody of his ilk. I listened to a lot of pods with those VC guys, and Peter Thiel, for those who don't know, was the first major investor in Facebook and made billions of dollars out of Facebook. But it might have been him, and he said, if people are not reaching across the desk and trying to rip the product out of your hands, you don't have enough product market fit for us to be interested in you. We want to hear of, first of all, what do you know that really smart people in the business don't know? And give me examples of people trying to rip the product out of your hands. And those two things will sort of determine much of their investing decisions. And when you were saying, people were saying, can I get my hands on the prototype? That's when we've got the same thing with the product we're developing at the moment, where people are just send me the prototype that you've got. Oh, I need to try this ASAP. That's when you're on a winner. And it's so easy when you're a entrepreneur coming up to be in love with your idea. And that's why we always refer people to the book, The Mum Test. And the Mum Test is where you should ask people who are not your mum what they think of the product. And the ultimate test is when you do a Kickstarter, and you guys were all sitting there watching the screen because you're trying to figure that out. I had a similar experience with a product I launched once, and we did 240 grand in sales on the first day that went live. And I was in a hotel in Los Angeles at the Mondrian on Sunset Boulevard, and I went to bed, and in the morning, and I got a phone call at 3 a.m. and it was my business partner saying we just did 240 grand in sales in the first hour, and I was like, holy shit, we have product market fit here, we're away. And that went on to be a huge successful business. But you sort of know fairly quickly whether you've got it or not. It should be like, I always say, it's a bit like dating. You should know on the first date, hey, there's something here, like there's some energy here, or there's just not, and don't take it personally. But
it's funny you say the mum test, because in tech and what we think about the mum test is, giving the product to your mum and can she use it without instruction. So really good story that Nick, one of my colleagues, recently told me that he's from New Zealand. That's where his mum lives, and he recently sent her one of our products, and he was waiting for the phone call to be like, hey, I've got it, like set me up on it and all of that. And life got in the way. He forgot about it, and like a month later, he was speaking to her and was like, oh yeah, and what happened with that product? You should have called me so I could get you set up. She's like, oh no, I'm set up. I'm set up, used it. It's great. Like, it's incredible. Like, thank you.
Done. All right. So we've got the website. We've got the AFR saying that it's the best thing since sliced bread. You've got your Kickstarter campaign underway. What was your e-commerce journey? So the good thing about this product is the price point, right? So you're not selling $25 supplement or an $80 lipstick. You've got some margin, right? How much of the price roughly? Like, what do they sell for, ballpark?
So our smallest size is $669 Australian dollars with the display and our magnetic stand, and then the 17 Pro, which is part of our Pro line, that's $12.50,
right, including
the stand.
So you got a higher ticket, so there's some margin in there to go advertise and do things. So what was your e-com journey? From day one, what did you first do? Did you buy some meta ads? What did you do?
So we went through a journey that I guess a lot of people, starting business, where you get a couple of different agencies and they all start kind of pulling you in different directions, and you don't really know how to audit their work or how to suggest things, and you kind of want to be a good client as well, but you also don't want to kind of go along for the ride. So we had I guess some success here and there, and it wasn't really kind of taking us to where we wanted and where the product wanted to go. But then we end up joining an e-commerce mastermind, and obviously you guys all know the power of those masterminds and having structured education of something there's so many facets to it, but then also learning not just from the community, the mentor, but also learning from the peers as well. So that was, at least for me personally, that was very pivotal to actually being able to learn, and particularly Facebook meta ads was the main first channel for us.
Which one did you join?
It was called e-commerce. It still is called e-commerce equation. I think it's the largest.
Yeah, they do a great job.
Yeah, they're
what's
awesome.
his name?
Jay Wright.
Jay Wright. Yeah, we've heard that over and over. They do a good job, and the community's strong, which is good.
Yeah, they're very good.
So yeah, if you are listening and you specifically need e-commerce coaching, have a look at Jay as well.
Would absolutely recommend.
Yeah. So that's it, isn't it? I mean, you get around people that are doing it, and you're learning from these people. So you went into there and you learned marketing, right? Facebook marketing.
Pretty much. So it was one piece at a time, where you learn about how to make a website that communicates all the important parts, I guess, about your product. And for us, it's definitely a considered purchase. So for us, it's really about communicating how we've made a lot of the product and design decisions, how it's different to the other, I guess, alternatives out there, and also how often do you work from a place where you just have your laptop, and is that a problem that's worth solving as well? So kind of allowing the people to kind of see, does this apply to them, and does our product help them work better? So that's the website piece, and over time then you learn, okay, I should be doing emails as well. So then you learn emails, and that's a whole field in of itself, and then you learn meta ads, Facebook and Instagram,
retargeting,
Google ads as well. So people are searching for particular things. How do you get them? So it's just one channel at a time. But I guess we had to learn everything.
So was the learning path in yours, was it principally meta, or was it was there YouTube or Instagram or
visual channels?
Yeah, visual channels.
Visual channels where people can see the quality of the product. They can see also how thin it is. So yes. I think once you see on the side profile, you go, wow, I can actually take that in my bag with me. So that and then also what do you do once you see a new product? You go to YouTube and you go for product reviews, or you go to Google and go for reviews. So there's a lot of tech press publications. There's a lot of YouTube reviews, and that kind of helps people see a deeper dive when you're only selling in e-commerce at that time. where people can actually see as close to the product as getting in person to know whether it's something they should buy or not.
You're sponsoring podcasts as well. I've seen you on Pompliano's podcast. Like, who are some of the big podcasts that you've also been able to get associated with?
That's the main podcast that we did for a couple months earlier this year.
Yeah.
But yeah, always testing new channels. And, I guess Anthony's awesome to work with, like loves our product. So
has it been successful?
Yeah. It's really good. We still see that kind of like trickle through, which, podcasts you always think is interesting because especially, I guess, here's where you think could an audio based, I guess, advertisement then get people to look you up, go to your website, see if the product's right for you and whatnot. But recently I was just on 2GB, and even that, as soon as I got off the air, you saw like our e-com store and had I think 500 people go to the website after. So it definitely works, the audio piece. But those types of partners that we work with, the most critical thing is like, do they use the product first, and do they really like it? So I think it's that piece first.
Yeah, I agree. These days people their bullshit meter's pretty strong.
People can tell.
And Pomp, you can imagine Pomp using this is in his wheelhouse, right? Like
traveling.
Yeah.
So with the YouTube videos and the YouTube reviews, is that something that you guys were doing yourselves and then promoting, or is this just organically happening from people? From customers?
I was going to ask the same thing. Yeah, were you like stimulating that? Like, were you targeting influencers and saying, "Here's our stuff. Can you do a review?"
Yeah,
both. It was also some of our some initial Kickstarter customers like either had channels as well, so they would go through and give that detailed review, as well as then once you're kind of live, then you also have YouTubers contact you.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Because it is a kind of product like. It's kind of cool to get one of those to review, right? It's not like a little $50 piece of crap. It's a decent bit of kit.
Yeah.
So you can attract good people with that, right?
Yeah, it's really nice. We also have, I guess, on our Instagram bio, we've got a link tree, and we actually have a creator application form where people can
apply to get a free one.
But potentially there's a lot of inquiries there. And really, it's for us to I guess sift through and see if it's the right type of person we want to work with.
We're just looking at your Instagram now. It's a very nice Instagram, by the way. Very cool.
So what has been the most successful e-com channel for sales? I mean, I know you're probably doing a mix of everything, but has there been one that stood out above the rest?
I think it's Meta for discovery, and then YouTube for reviews. So like there's been a couple of like YouTubers that we've given a coupon code to, and that then allows us to then see like once they purchase, where did they come from? Because if they've watched that review, they'll probably use that coupon code. And you see some of them just a lot of our customers like watch those reviews. Like we know it's very important. We try and put out as much content that educates them as possible, but at the end of the day, people want to see it from a third party. They want to see it from someone external.
It's funny. We see that we've got an electric toilets business of all things. And like we've produced all these nice videos in a studio and whatever. And we had this one guy who's like, his videos are not flash at all. Like he's like a 60-year-old dude and he reviews products. He stands there in front of his van and goes, "Hi, I'm Dave. Today I'm reviewing the gas-powered stove." And like, this fucking guy did a review on our toilet. It was a good review, but it's shit on the number of views ours get because it's the people look at him and go, "I trust that guy." Like it's real. And it was really powerful. Like it's the number one most watched thing in Australia for our toilet. It's just this humble dude standing in front of these vans saying, "It's this and that." Gave a couple of points which weren't 100% right.
They can picture him sitting on it, using it.
Yeah, totally. Like 100%, and it's really, really powerful.
Now, how are you fulfilling these orders? So are you guys have your own warehouses? Are you 3PLing? How are you controlling the whole experience from purchase to actually fulfilling and getting it into the customer's hands? Yeah,
so we have 3PLs in all those regions. And then at the same time, in some regions, we have like multiple 3PLs. Or we work with a 3PL that has multiple warehouses that say like, in the States, like East Coast and West Coast, you kind of want to distribute and have stock close by because it's quicker and faster to fulfill. but yeah, that's kind of
And how do you manage those 3PLs? Like we've got an online business, online businesses, and we do all our fulfillment ourselves, having that control over that, speed. And I hear a lot of nightmares, I've never heard someone just go, yeah, I've used this 3PL. They're the best thing I've ever, better than sliced bread. I've always heard the horror stories first, and they finally find someone that, they're okay. So what's your experience been like with a 3PL? And can you explain what a 3PL is for some of the viewers that might not know what it is?
Yeah, so obviously when you get your products, wherever they're manufactured, and say if it's in Australia, they all get shipped here by sea or by air. And once they're here, what do you do with them? Like you can either go and send them to a place that you run, and then when orders come through once a day or a couple times a day, you pick and pack them, put a label on, and ship them out with AusPost. Or there are, I guess, companies that specialize in this for multiple vendors, multiple brands, and whatnot. And we went down that path just because that's a big, operation to set up. And there's a lot of companies that obviously do specialize in it. It is a tricky one because there is obviously a spread of, service and opportunities. Like obviously it's the most critical thing for a customer, but it could be one of thousands of orders that day for that 3PL. So you got to, I guess, balance both sides. And it is very easy for someone to just pick the wrong product and put that into the box. So we continually we report on that stuff internally. We keep a very clear detail on the things that matter when it comes to the different products. We have the packaging is different colors, so even that's very distinct just to someone. It doesn't matter where, if it's on a shelf, they can easily get the right product as well as a visual cue. So trying to think about that whole experience and doing what we can to make that easier.
What is, if you don't mind me asking, what is your return rate on a tech product or a screen product like this?
So this is the beauty of I guess working with a lot of contract manufacturers that do a lot of med tech or with that background and those relationships, is that the quality and the defect rate is far below, industry standard. So as far as defect rates and return rates, you also then have a change of mind rate as well. And that kind of depends on, that fluctuates just based on who's buying and why, what their reason was, and things like that. So that kind of fluctuates, but our defect rate is really low.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a beautiful product. If you haven't seen an Espresso, we were just looking at the 17-inch, and just tell us quickly, just give us a little sales pitch on that, because you seem genuinely excited about it. And then when you fired it up for us, I was like, wow, this is actually, for those watching, we linked it to our Mac. I linked it to my MacBook, which I'm holding here, and I put his monitor next to it, and it was actually clearer and better quality on the second screen than it was on the Mac Retina display, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, so this one here is it's our Espresso 17 Pro, and this is a 17.3-inch display with a matte black finish. And what you'll see compared to, I guess, our existing range, it doesn't have as much of a chin at the bottom. So our 13 and 15-inch displays kind of been the world's thinnest portable monitor, and that was something, the how thin and how portable it is very important. But we did compromise on that to make it a bit thicker so that we could reduce the surface area profile. And that means so it can still fit into your backpack. So that's the first part. But then from a display perspective, one of the things that we wanted to do next was we had a lot of, content creators and people who do photo editing, cinematography, even who work in fashion or brand marketing, things like that. And they wanted a display that they could edit with color accuracy. So when we got the chance to look at a new product, we wanted to make something that was bigger, that was brighter, that was 4K, and that also had accurate colors. So that's kind of the journey that we went on with this Espresso 17 Pro.
Yeah, right. And that opens up a whole different level of market, not just the at-home user, but a business, the whole creative industry, right? Editors, absolutely, photographers, all of that sort of stuff, and kind of justify the purchase.
Yeah,
well.
and when it comes to a product, a display that can do all those types of things, having that color accuracy is the difference of whether they choose one product or the other, or whether it can do the job or whether it can't.
A question that I've been wanting to ask since the beginning of the pod: how do you protect the IP? So How do you protect your manufacturer? Because there's always horror stories about you create a product, you sign NDAs and the rest of it, and next thing you know, your product's being sold right beside you, and competitors, and sometimes it's the actual manufacturer, competing with you. So how do you protect that IP and making sure that someone isn't just going to come across and say, I'll pay 10% more, and they sell it to them?
So the first part to that is obviously like your relationship with your supplier. So that has to be like, first and foremost. Yes, you definitely can and should implement like an IP strategy with lawyers and all of those options, from like design patents and registered trademarks, things like that, and the ability to then sell the product in those end countries as well. And you still hear about it with other brands. There's a lot of notable stories like that as well. But then I think the most useful piece is really like the control of the supply chain, because that allows all the components that you're getting and that are being fed to that kind of final person. And from our specific perspective, like we also have a number of apps that we've built. So we have we have a web app, we have a desktop app that enables the touch on Mac experience, particularly on Mac, but also makes all the display settings super simple and at one place. So like that, again, it's the simplicity. And then we have an app on the Mac App Store and the Microsoft Store, which is like a very simple whiteboard that's activated with a tap of the pen on the display. So it's also then having that software level enhancement of having that whole experience come together, that it's not just the hardware. The hardware is incredible, but it's not just that.
You're creating a mode around that. And was that specific to that? Was it the reason you did that? Was it for user experience, or was it both, like also to protect the actual IP? Because that's a very, very good idea.
It's always about the user first. It's always, if it doesn't add value to the user, then that IP isn't really that valuable anyway.
Yeah.
So for us, it was once we launched our first version into the market, we really saw the spread of how a lot of people very simply don't know that they can extend screen versus just mirror what's on that one screen, and you have to walk them through going to settings and doing all that for them. So we thought, how do we bring all of that into one place, and they can click the Espresso app, and that opens everything that they need to know right there and then. So that simplicity, but it's actually making that simplicity is what then is why people buy your product rather than the others. So like it's very incentive aligned to make the best product that you can for your user base.
It leads to better reviews, because a better experience, better reviews. If it confuse people and frustrate people, it's not going to be a great outcome on that front.
Yeah.
So let's talk about JB Hi-Fi and go from there. So for those who are not in Australia or don't know what JB Hi-Fi is, they are one of the largest electronics retailers in Australia. Probably Harvey Norman might be bigger, but JB Hi-Fi would be, it's one of the biggest success.
JB's probably got more stores.
Yeah.
Oh, JB's the largest,
Yep.
is it? Okay, so JB Hi-Fi is a huge Australian success story, right? Like massive. So tell us that story. How did that come about to get into JB Hi-Fi? What was the pathway?
Yeah, so that was led by Will and Martin in the team. So they've done an awesome job with that on JB. So it got to this stage of like you grow an e-com for so long, and then you also have a couple of businesses that like contact you about like a B2B deal as well, and they come through the e-com channel as well. But as I guess the algorithms are always changing, the e-com landscape's always changing, and it does it is a good place to run, but at some point you kind of think, well, what's that next channel? And I guess, and also people would always ask, like, can I see it in person? I want to see it. I want to feel it. The touchscreen, I want to, touch it all as well. So that's kind of like it kind of knew it was the natural next step for us to make at some point. So yeah, really, we just found a couple of contacts that we got at JB Hi-Fi, and told them, kind of got them bought into what Espresso is all about, what the problem that it solves, and how does it fit into retail. And for us, it was really important to actually have it, displayed where people can see it, because then they can actually see how it like relates and what they like about it and whether it's right for them.
So they just campaigned directly. Did they contact them through LinkedIn and found the buyer, or how do you actually do it?
I think there's definitely definitely LinkedIn outreach. definitely email intros from people that we knew, and then someone from that organization then kind of going through to find that right person. So it's kind of like all of the above, like whatever it takes.
And then you got a call saying, hey, come in and show us the product, or what? I'm just trying to get inside of a deal like that so that people go, oh, okay, so that's how it actually happens.
Yeah, so it's a bit of a journey to understand, okay, I guess for the retailer, they kind of want to understand, like, does this deserve shelf space? Like, is this something, like, what is the value prop when people come into a JB Hi-Fi? Why would they want to buy it? And for us, what we do know is that, one, with retail, a lot of our customers, like, they might leave it to, I'm going on a trip tomorrow. Where can I go right now to pick one up? So that's one thing that's obviously quite useful. The other is a lot of people, when they get a new job or when they buy a new laptop, that's like a trigger point for them to say, well, I'm upgrading my tech. What else helps and fits my workflow? So I think obviously that, they stock like a lot of, laptops and things like that, that's very easy to say, okay, well, where do you actually work from? How often do you work, do you travel or work from other places that doesn't have a desk? And so they can introduce us in a very easy way to identify, like, is this a problem that's worth solving for the customer? Or if not, then they don't need it.
Great upsell for their sales staff as well.
It's helpful. It solves a problem. That's, everything that we put online is about, like, how it can improve how you work. And it's very easy for them to talk about it. It also helps that, like, we're an Aussie company as well, that we understand what being an Aussie worker is like, and that comes into, like, how we create products.
And so when they place an order with you, how long? What are the payment terms like? Is it really long, or is it reasonably short, or?
They're usually like, there's usually payment terms associated with that, but that's all pretty standard with retail.
Okay. Interesting.
What's your percentage mix of e-com sales versus retail sales now?
So retail's still just, like, really new for us. Yep. So that only came live towards the end of June. So it hasn't been like a full trading month, but, like, it's off to a good start.
Oh, you mean like June just gone?
Yeah, just now, yeah.
So you're literally a month in?
A month in.
Oh, God. So I didn't realize it was that fresh.
They're about
very
to blow
fresh.
Up.
Yeah.
Oh, dude, congrats. That's great.
It's been really exciting.
Well,
exciting.
I hope it goes for you how it did for the girl yesterday, because now 70% of her business is retail, because it just blew up for her. So
yeah, well, I think it's going to be a lot more than our e-com.
Yeah.
Where did the name come from? I'm assuming I already in my mind where it came from, but yeah.
It's something that, it was a decision that we made super early, but, it's kind of, obviously it was such a really good, more that time goes on, the more I look back and be like, that was just the perfect name for what we're doing. Because it, like, obviously espresso and, like, I love coffee. My co-founders love coffee, and everything to do with, like, the, part of it makes you more productive. Like, it's kind of this, I'm going to have a coffee and then I'm going to get to focused work. But then it's also like the, I think at that stage, obviously a lot more common now, it was this concept that, like, work is more of a state of mind. Work isn't necessarily a place, and the freedom and the ability to, like, work from anywhere, work from a coffee shop if that's, a place that you kind of want to work from for a bit, or, if you're before a meeting. So that's where, like, espresso came from. And we wanted a brand that that kind of encapsulated more of, like, how people work rather than the actual like, technology.
Cool. Terrific story.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah.
Like, it's just such a great story.
I can't believe you've only been in JB Hi-Fi a month. Like, you guys are just going to blow up.
We're very excited for it.
Yeah. And I mean, there'll be other retailers that come along and as well, I'm sure. So, Scott, thank you for coming in and for being so open, with the whole journey. As it's, back in the day, we always say this, but, back in the day as a young entrepreneur coming up, you'd just read the financial review, you'd read the BRW rich list, or something like that. And maybe the BRW would have some articles now and then, but they were like 4 or 5 pages, right? It's not, you don't actually get a feel for it and a real inside track. This is just so revolutionary. I'm always just so deeply grateful and blown away to be able to sit down with people that are doing stuff, and just every day we get to learn, working in this job of talking to people. So thank you for coming in on behalf of all the listeners as well, because I know there's a young man or a young woman right now listening that's going, oh my God, like maybe there is a way out of the 9 to 5, the grind, maybe it is possible for me. But there's so many great lessons here. Find a real problem, solve that real problem well, and And you don't need to know all the answers at the start. In fact, if you have waited to find out all the answers, it's probably too late, right? You guys just jumped in and went for it and went to foreign lands and had an adventure. And I think that's the other part is business is kind of a lifestyle choice. It deepens your life and enriches you. I think outside of the money and the success that you're having, I can hear just from the experiences, it would have changed you as a person, and the people you've met and the places you've been. It just gives you a deeper appreciation for life. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think it's just like being able to set like a big goal or something that's like worthy to go on this long adventure and see it for that adventure. But then also being able to just go like one step in front of the other and just, what is that next step? What's that one step in front of you? So you kind of got to like balance both. But like, yeah, I love it. I love it. The more that we get to do it, it's super exciting. So thanks for having me on to share my story.
It's another great advertisement for jumping in and doing business or getting into business with family and friends and making it a fun adventure, because it helps it to be a less lonely place, definitely.
Absolutely.
And don't miss how important that product market fit was. This has been successful because it solved a real problem and it solved it well. And all the enthusiasms, a lot of people out there, they're great, they're smart people, but if you don't have that foundation of a great idea, it's a lot harder. So,
and you're continuously improving it, right?
Yeah.
It's not just one product; it's multiple products now, and you can see that very clearly with some of the samples that you have here. So well done.
And that's the exciting part of tech. Tech, means that you have to keep kind of up to date. But for us as compared to, I guess, the larger players, we're still quite a small and agile company, so we can see exactly like what's on the horizon and try and like, I guess, pick what are problems worthy of us solving and then go all out at it.
Just remarkable. 2018, we're here in 2024. That's 6 years from, a bunch of kids getting together and saying,
go to Shenzhen.
And go to Shenzhen, like a bunch of kids from there to having a billionaire investor, a product in over 100 JB Hi-Fi stores and just blowing up. So congratulations, and can't wait to see what's next. For those of you watching at home, please drop a comment. Let us know what you think of this one. Drop a comment and give Scott some accolades. Not that he needs it, but this is what we want. We want to encourage more entrepreneurs to come on the show. Like and subscribe to the channel. And for those of you that are out there on your own, we do run a private coaching group where you get to meet 7, 8, 9-figure entrepreneurs in our group of entrepreneurs that are in the program. We've got some extraordinary people with stories like this. And you get access to the entire database. You get to come to our private events, talk to us one-on-one and do coaching calls. So if you're interested in that, go to unemployable.com.au/coaching and you can apply there. I'd love to have a chat with you and see if it's a fit for you. But other than that, have a great day out there, guys. Thank you for watching the show, and we'll see you on the next episode of Unemployable.
Hey there, I hope you enjoyed that episode of Unemployable. If you'd like to watch another episode, just click there.